Okay, and I'm Sarah. Oh, go ahead. We'll start. Yeah, from the top. Take it from the top.
Welcome to the True Crime ABC's podcast. I'm Dani.
And I'm Sarah. Take a journey with us through our alphabet of true crime, one letter at a time.
Listen through the end of each episode for reading recommendations
and a sneak peek into what's going on in the podcast next week.
This episode is supported by the letter B. This week, B is for boats.
I'm on a boat. In my flippy floppies.
So, a couple of fun
boats
facts
and
about
hoes.
Yeah, a couple of fun facts about boats from the U.S. Coast Guard. These are from the 2021 recreational boating statistics.
I read them every weekend.
I know, right? Light reading. If you need some leisurely.
I need something to do. I'm just like, oh, yes, the U.S. Coast Guard 2021 recreational boating statistics are out.
So there were 658 boating fatalities nationwide in 2021. And that was actually a 14% decrease from 2020. So I don't know if that was a pandemic thing or what.
Well, and that's crazy too, because that's nationwide. That's not internationally. And 658, that seems like kind of a lot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure. And, of course, I don't think this will be a surprise to anyone, but alcohol continued to be the leading known contributing factor in fatal boating accidents in 2021, accounting for over 100 deaths or 16% of the fatalities. So,
Yikes.
Yeah,
don't drink
definitely.
And drive, kids.
Yep. I don't think anybody would be surprised by that, though.
No, that's no.
Oh, gosh.
So my story this week actually takes place on a cruise ship.
Oh.
And since 2005, I know how you feel about cruise ships.
Yeah, I'm not a fan.
There's nowhere to go. So it's kind of funny. It looks like Escape. Cruise ships and the cruising industry does not have an FAA. It's not like airlines where there is a federal reporting, organization rules. That. Yeah, there's no. I mean, I'm sure there are some rules, but like, there's not one whole organization who collects cruise ship data.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I was able to find information from cruisejunkie.com that showed since 2005 there have been a total of 448 major being in quotes, cruise ship accidents, which would include boats that sank or ran aground. If they caught fire, if they ran into something a la Titanic and icebergs.
Mm-hmm.
And then more specifically, from a crime standpoint, from 2000 to 2019, there were reported 623 cruise ship passengers and crew deaths. And those could have included natural ones as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not necessarily just somebody was killed on a ship. It could have been, some guy had a heart attack after too many rounds to the cruise buffet.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 623 fatalities, 557 were from passengers, 66 were crew members. And most occurred while the boats were at sea.
Mm-hmm.
Very few while the ship was actually docked, which makes sense because if your no escape issue,
Mm-hmm.
if your appendix bursts while you're on board,
I can't imagine they're turning the ship around to get you to the hospital.
So they maybe trauma hawk you out, but like if you're in the waters off of like Belize or something, like who's to say what that government's gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I'm
not sure that. I don't know. So who's to say?
This week, I am bringing a story about Natalie Wood, who you may or may not know who she is. She's an actress. The case takes place.
I know who she is.
Yeah.
I know it's boat related.
It is boat related. So Natalie Wood.
Why it's on this episode.
Yes. Natalie Wood, married to Robert Wagner, who you may know as number 2 from Austin Powers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably the most recent reference for anybody who may be listening. But yeah, so they were on board this boat. I believe it was their boat. They were married at one point. Not sure if they were married at this point in history because it was a little bit on and off, I think, near the end.
Sure.
But it was the two of them, boat captain, and also a friend of theirs who you may or may not have heard of, Christopher Walken. Okay.
Oh, love me some Christopher Walken.
Yeah, it's fun because when I was looking into this case, some of the like the investigation and things where he's involved, he's just so young, and it's weird to see him in such a, in footage from the 80s, because obviously I didn't grow up with him like that. But
fun little piece of trivia. A Christopher Walken movie, namely Blast from the Past, also starring one Brendan Fraser,
one of my
was a favorite in our household growing up. My brother and I regularly quote that movie.
All right, so the four of them are on this boat. They go out to dinner. They're in Catalina, in case anybody's wondering where this took place.
It's the friggin' Catalina wine mixer.
This did not happen during the Catalina wine mixer, just to be clear.
Damn.
They're on the boat. They go to dinner. They have a nice evening. They wanted to go back to the boat to have a few cocktails. Again, alcohol, boating incidents.
Alcohol plus boats, kids, equals not so great.
They go back to the boat, which is named the Splendor, in case anybody's wondering about that.
Fancy.
Yes. So they go to this boat. I'm sure it's a yacht. They start drinking. Apparently there is a fight that happens. There's an altercation or an argument, according to everybody that was interviewed. There was no physical violence. There was just some arguing.
Who was the argument between specifically, or was it just everybody sort of?
So apparently it was the three friends. So it was Natalie, Robert, and Christopher Walken.
Okay.
Arguing about, again, allegedly, about how much part of your personal life should you give up in order to be, in the spotlight and be an actor.
Okay. Yeah.
So there's apparently a situation that happens. There's yelling, arguing, what have you. According to Robert Wagner, he left the situation and then went down to bed. And when he went down to bed to the cabin, Natalie wasn't there. So whatever, he just figured that she went to blow off steam and ended up going to bed. Suspicious. If you ask me. A little bit.
Suspicious.
One of the weird parts about this story to me is that even when looking into the research, the case gets discussed, it kind of goes cold, nothing ever really happens, and nobody's ever really, it's never really solved. And then Christopher Walken and Robert Wagner go on to continue successful Hollywood careers like it was just a regular Tuesday. And that is it's just so weird to me. That's
sort of like one of those, the caveats of fame is, you have no privacy, but you get to do whatever the hell you want, which is gross. But I mean, have the last 30 years taught us nothing about what you can get away with as a celebrity? I mean, truly.
Apparently there's this interview with Natalie Wood, obviously before this whole situation, but it's very, very chilling. And you'll have to take a look at it. 48 Hours did an episode about Natalie Wood, and the clip is in there if you want to see that episode as well. It's a great episode. But the episode is called Death in Dark Water.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the clips that they have in there of Natalie when she was alive was talking about how fearful she has always been about dark water, seawater, she says specifically.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's just so bizarre that she ends up obviously perishing in the sea.
Weird, but my story, same.
What?
The person was terrified of ocean water.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, that's funny. Okay.
Yeah.
Wild.
So essentially what happens is they find Natalie's body about a mile away from the boat. There's also a dinghy. So if anybody's not familiar with boating, it's just a small, tiny vessel, usually holds one or two people.
This boat's for the mummies and the children.
Exactly. So there was this dinghy that was also found sort of near the body. So essentially the story was that Natalie went to go party hop after this fight, which again was completely out of character according to everyone who
Yeah.
actually knew her well.
Right.
So she left this dinghy to go party hop and, obviously had some trouble and didn't make it back. And that's
Also
apparently the
seems out of
story.
character for any singular female. Like,
I mean, it
like,
was the 80s, right?
I know, but I still feel like there was that.
Yeah.
Like, you don't walk by yourself at night. You certainly don't
Yes.
hop into boats and row somewhere by yourself at night if you're afraid of the water.
Yeah. It seems very, again, even when looking into the details of the case, it's very
Yeah.
sort of like, oh,
Just
everybody
like
just
a
sort of
convenient
accepted the
excuse.
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Ugh,
just moved on. So
gross. Yeah.
very, very strange. One of the other really interesting pieces that I thought is they ended up, again, this mystery, this case was never solved back when it was originally open. It ended up
Mm-hmm.
going cold and, they hadn't really done much with it. But in
Mm-hmm.
2011, the captain of the boat wrote a book as well.
Of course.
About all of the salacious details around all
Yeah.
of the things that were on the boat and the alcohol and the drugs and
Sure.
all of
Gotta
the
monetize that
truth,
tragedy.
the truth and the details of what happened, right? Quote unquote.
Right.
That book came out and they reopened the case in
Mm-hmm.
2011 because of all of that. So basically they went through, I'm not sure how deep of an investigation was done
Mm-hmm.
or what, other than the captain, what other witnesses they were able to talk with. But I believe that Robert Wagner was cleared officially after the case went cold in 2022.
Okay.
So again, he was cleared. Very
Yeah.
interesting.
Hmm.
So I was also able to find a little bit of information from the lifeguard who recovered Natalie's body.
Okay.
And this is, just terribly, terribly sad because it sounds like when they found her, she hadn't been dead for that long,
Oh.
which means that she was probably, if they would have found her a few hours earlier, she
Right.
possibly could have been saved, right?
Yeah.
So just all really, really sad.
Hmm.
It's definitely a tragedy, but it's just one of those things that's crazy to me that they didn't find anybody, especially with all of the, advances in technology. Did they do any DNA research?
Right.
Did they do any forensic, like rework of the forensics?
Yeah.
Or did they just go talk to a couple people and then go, okay, we're good. I don't know.
Job well done.
So very, very interesting stuff.
Is there any break? Like, what was Robert and Christopher Walken's story? Like,
Okay,
what did they
so
like as a breakdown of like how the night went on? Like, what was the night? Well, how did they think she died? Did she drown? Was she hit with a blunt object?
so she definitely drowned, but there was really there were some bruises and some bruising on her body, but they attributed it to the fall. They thought that she maybe fell out of the dinghy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So again, little bit suspicious that there's marks on the body, but nobody gets tied to, anything like that happened.
Right.
Violence.
Ooh, yuck.
Going back to Christopher Walken and Robert Wagner, the captain, there was apparently this moment after they realized that like Natalie was gone, that they were going to have to get their story straight. And it was sort of driven by Robert Wagner saying, okay, guys, we got to figure this out and make sure that all of our stories are the same.
Right.
Which I don't know, again, suspicious?
Doesn't seem like the
right, I don't know.
The thing that an innocent man would do. Like, that just doesn't seem
right. It's very strange to me that would be the next thing that you do. They basically go, everybody's got the same story about, she went to party hop. She obviously fell out of the boat and unfortunately perished in the water. That was essentially all they would say. And even if you look at like the interviews with Christopher Walken, he's very just, they all have the same kind of tone. Like they're all very somber about it, but there's no sense of responsibility or deep regret of being part
Mm-hmm.
of the incident, and again, they're actors, right? Who knows? But
Right.
the read that you're getting from that interview from at least Christopher Walken, the one that I watched, was like, okay, well, still seems very, very cold for someone who was
Mm-hmm.
considered a friend, someone
Yeah.
that you worked with, that kind of thing.
Right. And of course, we can never assume that not everybody grieves the same way.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
now more than ever, more and more of like the analysis of grief and things like that it's truly different from person to person. So we can't put, a specific face on anything. But
No.
as somebody who is a wildly emotional human, I can't imagine feeling cold about that.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that seems crazy.
Yeah. And again, there wasn't too much from Robert Wagner outside of that either. Just
Right.
very, it was obviously an unfortunate situation. He lost his wife, but that's about it.
Right. Ugh,
So,
yikes. So it's officially closed. They're never going to do another.
I mean, unless something wildly, crazy breaks open in the case or some new witnesses come forward, which, I mean, at this
Mm-hmm.
point, it's been over 30 years.
Right.
Um, it would be, not that it's unheard of, but it would just be very unlikely for that to happen. So
Right.
they would need some
Yeah.
some new information for sure.
I have maybe the first true crime story that I remember being interested in.
Okay.
It was the first one that I remember like seeing on TV and watching news reports about. Um, Granted, I was in 6th grade, so like it was just the beginning of my weird little, start with true crime. But um, so I'm going to talk about the disappearance of Amy Lynn Bradley, which is like late 90s story. So it's a
Okay.
good one. All right. So in March of 1998, the Bradley family boarded the Rhapsody of the Seas, which was a Royal Caribbean cruise ship registered out of Norway. The cruise was supposed to go to Puerto Rico, or it started in Puerto Rico, and then was supposed to go to Aruba, Curacao, St. Martin, St. Thomas, and then the US Virgin Islands, and then circle back to Puerto Rico. So the Bradley family consisted of Iva and Ron, the parents, and then 23-year-old Amy, and then 21-year-old Brad. P.S. Brad Bradley, why? Why did you do that to your child? I'm
I hope
so
his
sorry,
full
the
name is
Bradley
Bradley.
family. But why? I'm like, Ron Bradley, come on. Ron Bradley, the father, had actually won the cruise tickets through work. And he was super excited to take his whole family on this amazing, all paid vacation. It was going to be probably the last one they were going to do where the kids were like still kids, even though they were in their early 20s, the last one they would do without extra
Yep.
husbands and wives and kids and all that.
Yep.
So they were really excited to do this all together. And the Bradley family was really, really close. Like they were a very close knit family. It was just the 4 of them. Amy and Brad, the siblings, were said to have been more like best friends than siblings. They were really just truly sounded like a lovely, nice family.
Mm-hmm.
They got on the ship. They were having an amazing time. They were all basically going out like fancy dinners and doing all the fun daytime stuff as a whole family. And then at night, Amy and Brad were going out and just partying it up, having exactly what you're supposed to do on a cruise.
Yep.
Just having a blast. Amy was lovely. She was very pretty. So she, of course, made friends with the band on the boat, right? They were called Blue Orchid. So a little bit about Amy. The Bradley family was from Virginia, right? She was born there in the late 70s or mid 70s. She was a pretty accomplished athlete. She had actually had a basketball scholarship to Longwood University, and she got her undergraduate degree in phys ed. She was planning to start her master's degree in sports psychology. And despite being a really good swimmer and having lifeguard training, she actually did not enjoy the ocean. Right. She was scared of the ocean, which funny because Natalie Wood,
Yeah.
kind of the same thing, did not like ocean water.
Yep.
She had tried to convince her parents to let her not go.
Oh gosh.
She didn't want to go on the trip. Her parents talked her into it. Her brother talked her into it, and they were having an awesome time. right? At 23, she was beautiful and had caught the attention of many other of the male guests aboard. On March 24th, on the third day of the cruise, Amy and her brother had gone to the ship's club, like the nightclub. They were having like a Mardi Gras night.
Okay.
And Amy had spent a lot of the night dancing with the band's bass player, the Blue Orchid, the band, whose nickname was Yellow. Stupid.
What?
Yellow in the band Blue Orchid, whose name was actually Alistair Douglas.
That's the bass player?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was a bass player. Around 3:30 a.m., Brad, the brother, decided he was like done for the night. He was going to go back to the cabin. Amy said she was going to stay for a little bit longer, but she'd see him back at the room. By 4 a.m., Amy actually did go back to the room. She and her brother hung out for a few minutes, just kind of sitting on the balcony, where Amy told him she wasn't feeling that great. So she was just going to sit on the balcony, smoke a couple cigarettes, whatever. He told his sister, "I love you," and went to bed. And sadly, those were the last words he would ever say to his sister. Oh. And in interviews later, like I watched a shit ton of the Bradley family interviews and sobbed like a baby 5 or 6 times, because he had said it always comforted him to know that the last thing he told his sister was that he loved her.
Oh gosh.
And that,
yeah,
you know, as someone with good brothers, like it's right in the old feel skis. Timeline wise, Brad got back to the room at 3:30. Amy got back at 4 a.m. At around 5:30 a.m., Amy's dad, Ron, woke up for a second and noticed Amy was sitting out on the balcony, right? She was just relaxing, whatever. And so Ron rolled over and fell back asleep. He's like, "Oh, she's fine. She's back in the room." When he woke up for real at 6 a.m., Amy was not on the balcony anymore. So as I said earlier, the Bradleys were really close. It was not like Amy to take off, especially that early in the morning after drinking. We've all been there. Like you're not like, I'm one of those people, I can't sleep after drinking, but I'm not getting out of bed, you know? So like, I'm going to wake up at 6, but I'm going to lay in bed till 10.
Oh, for sure.
Honest. Yeah. Not that, you know, in my mid 30s, I can drink more than a beverage or two without feeling like garbage. But so it just wasn't like her to leave that early and not leave a note or wake somebody up and let them know where she was going. So her family understandably was immediately concerned. Yeah. Right. They went directly to the ship's purser to ask if they would do an all call, like on the ship for Amy, like over the PA. The purser initially refused because he didn't want to wake up the guests. It was this was that early in the morning, right? It was 6 a.m. or whatever. I was also a little confused because purser in my head is like a money person. They're like an administrative person. So I was confused as to why they would be the one to do the all call, but I did do a little research because I was like, what the heck? And after a little bit of research, apparently modern cruises, the purser, part of the responsibilities include like handling passenger manifests and other kind of passenger related administrative duties. Okay. The purser said no. So the Bradleys were like, okay, we'll go and search the ship. So they spent almost 2 hours up and down searching for the ship before they went back to the purser and were like, she's not here. Will you please do an announcement? She's not in anywhere we can get to. So at 7:50 a.m., the purser makes that announcement. The ship did initially, they did a garbage job of investigating. I mean, just absolute trash can investigation, which apparently seems to be on par for cruise ships in international waters. It's, you know, it's a free for all out there. Like
maybe if they had, some kind of regulatory board or something that could,
and that's the thing,
have some standards.
Standards. What are those? So it's like, because they're in an international water, it's nobody's jurisdiction. So nobody cares or nobody wants to step on feet in case somebody gets pissed about jurisdiction or whatever. So they did a bad job. So shortly after Amy disappeared and they had made that announcement, the ship docks in Curacao. And the crew lets 3,000 people get off the boat. Oh my so gosh. I like, bye suspects. There you go.
Yeah.
Wild.
Any chance that you had of finding that person in the haystack?
Sure.
There it goes.
Yeah. So they docked in Curacao. Curacao is not just a delicious blue alcohol. It is also, so it's considered a constituent country of the Netherlands. So it's falls within the Netherlands realm, basically. So it is technically part of the Lesser Antilles. It's about 40-ish miles off the coast of Venezuela. ironically, and I thought this was funny, it's part of what are called the ABC Islands.
Oh my.
True Crime ABC podcast,
Hey.
we see you, which include Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. So I've been to none of those islands. I hope to someday. But maybe not on a cruise ship. After all the passengers disembark, the captain's finally like, oh yeah, we'll do a search now. So they go around trying to find evidence of Amy's disappearance. They also called in the Netherlands Antilles Coast Guard, which is the island version of the Coast Guard under, again, falling within the military realm of the Netherlands, my people. And by March 29th, so this is 5 days after she goes missing, the Coast Guard found nothing and ended the investigation. Suspicions were raised about Amy's little band friend, Yellow, still a stupid nickname, and the story he told authorities. So he claimed that he and Amy split up around 1, which this is where the timeline's a little convoluted because I thought Brad left at 3:30 from the club. So didn't he see his sister still with this guy at 3:30? Maybe not. Maybe that wasn't the case. I don't know. But the last known footage of Amy is her dancing with Yellow at the club. He claims that he didn't see her. They left each other and that was that. However, another passenger aboard claimed to have seen Amy and Yellow at 6 a.m. walking up towards the main deck that morning that Amy went missing. So Yellow also, and this part is like where I think brother's intuition, like sibling intuition. So Yellow goes up to Amy's brother, Brad, after, that morning and was like, I'm so sorry about what happened. And at that point, though, it was only Amy's family and a very tiny number of crew that knew she was missing, right? As far as the announcement went, they just did an all call saying, Amy Bradley, please go back to her cabin. They didn't say, does anybody know where Amy Bradley is?
Oh,
so
man.
Like, how did he know she was missing? So theories. One theory is that Amy just fell overboard. Since the only things of Amy's that were missing were her cigarettes and lighter, like she didn't even take her shoes. So they assume maybe she just fell overboard somewhere between 5:30 when her dad had seen her and 6 when he got up and didn't see her. That she had maybe fallen over the family's private balcony, or maybe she had gone up to the main deck to smoke a cigarette. She wasn't feeling well. Sometimes after a long night, you're not feeling great. Maybe she was a little unsteady, whatever. Another theory is that, and this one was debunked pretty quickly. Another theory was that Amy willingly jumped overboard, like in an attempt to take her life. Her family immediately nipped that in the bud. They were like, absolutely not. Amy was a pleasant person, very happy. She had just gotten a puppy, which if I had just gotten a puppy, my life would revolve around that puppy. And she was going into a master's program. Like she was excited about the future. And nobody had ever mentioned her ever struggling with depression or anxiety or anything. So it would be very out of character for her to want to complete suicide. And again, there were people who hide those things very well. You know what I mean? Sure, it happens, but she had such a close family. Like I would find it very surprising if that were the case. Now, the predominant theory is that Amy was taken and sex trafficked, which is pretty common in the Caribbean. In the 25 years since Amy's disappeared, there have been a lot of people who reported seeing somebody or having a conversation with someone who looked like Amy.
Oh, that's bizarre.
Yeah. And most of those reports were that she was in the company of scary men, big burly dudes who didn't take their eyes off her type thing.
Yeah.
So on the day that Amy disappeared, the Bradley family get off the boat. They're not getting back on. They're going to stay and search for Amy and keep in contact with the Dutch authorities and all of that. Basically, on that day, a taxi driver on Curacao, comes forward and claims to have seen a woman who was matching Amy's description, who basically, like in a panic, asked him where the nearest phone was and then ran off scared.
Oh, gosh.
Which is yuck. I don't love it. Then later, and I think this was, reports are, the timeline's very convoluted. Some places were like 2 weeks later, a guy came forward. Some were 2 years later. So at some point, a Canadian man claimed to have seen Amy on the beach with 2, again, kind of big, scary guys. He had described the tattoos she had. Specifically, she had one on her back left shoulder that was Taz, the Tasmanian devil, like
Because
Looney
it was the
Tunes.
late 90s, yeah.
Because it was the late 90s and like Space Jam, let's be honest. So she had a Taz spinning a basketball on her back left shoulder. But then again, the big guys took her away. And then this one really grinds my gears. In 1999, a U.S. naval officer claims to have met a woman in a brothel who told him her name was Amy Bradley, and she begged him for help, saying she was a U.S. citizen from Virginia, but he was too much of a puss and didn't want to get in trouble for being at a brothel, so he didn't report it until years later. And by that time, it was gone. Like, that brothel was no longer there. Sir, you deserve it. A nice swift punch to the face. Yeah.
How do you is that all you think about?
Yeah.
Like where that girl is?
It's wild to me. It freaking blows my mind. And then the last kind of main sighting was that in 2005, a woman reported meeting Amy in a department store bathroom in Barbados. And after Amy told the woman that her name was Amy and she was from Virginia, some big guys came into the woman's bathroom, took Amy, and let her out.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah. So despite all of those sightings and reports, Amy has never been found. So the Bradley family did the circuit. I think they did like Oprah, they did Dr. Phil, which always leads to a bunch of crazy people reaching out saying they have information or whatever, but you go through all of it in the hopes that it leads to a happy ending. One of the guys, and I didn't put this in my notes, so this is just from memory. We'll see how good it is. A guy, basically a mercenary, came forward who said he was a private investigator / warrior, basically, and that he had information about where Amy was, that she was still on Curacao, and he could take a team down with him to rescue her. So the Bradley family fund this. They gave him 25 grand. And then, but they say, we want proof of life. The guys go down and like the mercenaries, investigators, whatever. And they send a pretty convincing picture of a woman being kind of held by the arm by a bigger man on the beach. And it's a grainy photo, but it does kind of look like Amy. It's her stature, her hair color.
Reasonable enough. Yeah.
Yeah. And it looks like she has a tattoo on her shoulder, but you can't really tell what it is. And again, this was late 90s, early 2000s. So we didn't have, 4K, like high res, crazy iPhones with better camera. Yeah.
Photography was at a different level than it is now.
Right, for sure. So the guy sends him that and he's like, I need more money to pay my guys. And so they sent him more money, like $100,000. And he evaporates, disappears. Luckily, the Bradleys were able, he was arrested, I think, 5 years after.
Well, that's good at least.
Yeah, and went to jail. And I think he was required to pay back the Bradleys. But again, the court can say you have to pay him back. And then if you don't have the money, you don't have the money. So Amy's story, Amy's investigation is still technically open. The FBI is offering a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to the recovery of Amy Lynn Bradley and any information that leads to the identification, arrest, and conviction of the person or persons responsible for her disappearance. So it's not a closed case. Nobody ever came to the conclusion that she fell overboard or killed herself.
Right. There hasn't been any recent sightings since 2005?
Not that I could find. But again, if you think of when that happened, 2005, shortly after that, you would have had Natalie Holloway. So I feel like, maybe other stories were sparklier. I mean, just like with most cases, it just goes cold. So yeah, if anybody has information, please turn that into the FBI. They can't give me statistics on axes, but hopefully they can find somebody. So
right.
It's just kind of sad.
Yeah, very much so. That was definitely it was a good one. Doesn't make me want to get on a cruise ship any more than I did before I heard the story. So
let's go to Curacao right now.
Listen, I'll go with you, but we can't go on a cruise ship. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, that's fair. We'll get the boys in on it. We can go.
There you go.
They can go fish or something, and we can lay on a beach. Although I have a beach like very close by. We can just go to
we can just do that.
and not have to go in international waters. Although yesterday I went to the beach and like hurt the crap out of my pack. So maybe I shouldn't go to the beach anymore. Because once you turn 30, you just fall apart.
No, you just need to get yourself a really comfy lawn chair. That's all.
Yeah, well,
and drag it all the way down to the water.
I also hurt myself getting out of the water. Like it wasn't even so like our beach has like the beach that we like to go to is like there's a dune and then there's steps to go in, kind of like you walk down shelves basically. And my foot sunk into one of the shelves when I was getting out and I like bit it a little bit. I was graceful about it, but I still bit
always so graceful.
Forever graceful. That's me. So my book recommendation this week is actually not about the crime that my story was about. There weren't really any books that included any information about Amy Lynn Bradley's disappearance, and the ones that did weren't good books. The ratings were garbage on Amazon, and I'm not going to waste anybody's time with a shitty book. So the book I did recommend, though, is one of my faves. It is The Perfect Storm, A True Story of Men Against the Sea by Sebastian Junger. They actually made it into a movie in the early 2000s with George Clooney and Diane Lane and Marky Mark himself.
It was a good one.
Our very own Mark Wahlberg.
I think I saw that in the theater.
Yes, I 100% saw this in theater with Mama Deb. It's one of those weird books where like it is a true story, but then it sort of loosely goes fictional because it's about a boat that disappeared and we don't know what happened. So the writer basically took a true story, wrote as true as he could, and then took some sort of creative liberties when it comes to the actual disappearance of the boat. So The Perfect Storm is about the Andrea Gale, which was a fishing boat out of Gloucester, Massachusetts. My husband is from that area, and he made sure to tell me how to say Gloucester correctly. It is spelled Gloucester. It is pronounced Gloucester. Also, guys, it's Worcestershire sauce, in case you're wondering. No more of this Worcestershire shit. It's Worcestershire. Worcestershire. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk about Worcestershire sauce.
I really enjoyed it. Oh gosh. So my book recommendation this week is actually written by the younger sister of Natalie Wood, so Lana Wood. And this book is called Little Sister, My Investigation into the Mysterious Death of Natalie Wood. So Lana actually goes into her own investigation, and so this book documents her findings. So if you do want some additional information about my story today, go check it out. Next week's episode will be supported by the letter C. Check us out on social media and give us your best guesses on what our theme for next week will be.
If you would like to hear more from us, please check us out on Instagram, TikTok, and Patreon at True Crime ABC Podcast, or email us your thoughts, ideas, and listener stories to truecrimeabcpodcast@gmail.com. Yeah, thanks for listening, peeps.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We appreciate it.
Follow us on all the things. I've been working real hard on social media.
It's best that you do that. That is definitely strength of yours.
I have never felt older. We have always been like pretty tech savvy. We saw Facebook happen. We were the age that people got on Facebook. We had beautifully coded MySpaces with our favorite songs and the best top 8s, right? And so diving into Instagram and TikTok has been a wild ride. I want to know how my students can make these beautiful videos, but like don't know how to bold something in Word.
Well, it's all about what you learn on, what you grow up learning.
Yeah.
Right?
I know. It's just, ugh.